Next thing you want to do, if you really want to maintain the right attitude, learn how to greet people. I was rather amused this evening as I was coming in a few minutes before 7. I greeted a number of you always the same way. Good morning. Most of you responded, good morning. Now, whether I'm in Auckland, New Zealand or Augusta, Maine, whether it's 9 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the evening, on average, 85% of them will respond, good morning. And then almost immediately they'll say, it's not morning. I'll say, then why'd you say morning? Because you said morning, that's why. I said, it makes just a really neat point. You see, you go out in life to find friends, they're very scarce. You go out in life to be a friend, you'll find them everywhere. What you send out is exactly what you're going to get back. I believe the good book says, as you sow, so also shall you reap. The computer people are terribly negative. They say garbage in, garbage out. Us folks that are optimistic, upbeat, and positive, say you put the good stuff in, you get the good stuff out. Send the good stuff out, you get the good stuff back. It's the law. That is simply the way it works. When you greet people, greet them with excitement and enthusiasm. If they beat you to it and they say, good morning, how you doing? Then you need to be absolutely honest. You say, better than good. How are you doing? Or super good, but I'll get better. Instead of the way that most people do it, how you doing? Well, fine, since it's Friday. Or, how you doing? Well, good, since it's payday. Or great, since the weather is fine, today. I don't you just love it when they pull themselves up and say, well, under the circumstances. I mean, it makes you wonder what they're doing under there in the first place, don't it? When somebody asks you how you're doing, be honest. Say, outstanding, but I'm improving. You might say, well, Zig, suppose I'm not doing outstanding. Am I telling the truth? Yes, you're telling the truth. You're just telling it in advance. That's all. But is that honest? You might say, well, I bring the theology into it. God's Son Himself did that. He said, I thank you, Father, for what you're going to do. You're just telling the truth in advance. That's all on earth that you're doing. And so you give them that very positive answer. And Kay, I'll have somebody say, Zig, do people always react favorably to that? Nah, we got some folks that, well, anyhow, everybody doesn't, they don't respond that way. Several years ago, a good buddy of mine and I were going down a cafeteria line. It was about 1:30. Now, in cafeterias, by about 1:30, the lunch crowd is over and you just kind of have stragglers going through. This was one of those brutally hot days. Not at all typical of Dallas. It just happened to be happening, in Dallas. And a gentleman in front of us was doing what I always do. Now, a number of years ago, my youngest daughter, Julie, who had her 40th birthday last week on the 26th, Julie, as a teenager, got a job in a cafeteria. Well, up until then, I just had kind of taken those folks working there for granted. I didn't realize just what a tough job they had. But when my daughter went to work there, I noticed something very interesting. I noticed that if the people behind the counter were pleasant and courteous, but delayed the line at all, then management said, move them on, move them on. If they gave them too much, management fussed. If they didn't give them enough food, then the customer fussed. I mean, it's a tough job. And so I made a decision that never again would I ever go down a cafeteria line without saying something pleasant and courteous to whoever was behind the line. Now, an interesting thing happens. By the time I've gone down the line 4 or 5 times, you can watch the ladies down on the other end, and almost invariably they're nudging each other and saying, there he is. There he is. Okay, now, if any two of you were to go with me to lunch in a cafeteria, that cafeteria where we've been 4 or 5 times, I'll guarantee you, on the dishes that they have an option, where they scoop it up, I'll get 25% more to eat than you will. Now, you can have what you want if you'll have enough other people get what they want, but that's not the motive behind it. I should be getting less, not more. But that's their way of saying thank you for treating me like a human being. Well, on this particular brutally hot day, we were walking down the line. The gentleman in front of me had gone to the same school I had, and he was greeting people positive and optimistic, and he got to the lady cutting the roast beef, and he asked her, how you doing? Now, you do know that some people perspire and some people sweat. Well, this gal that was cutting the roast beef, she was sweating. And when he said, how you doing? She wiped her hand across the forehead, and it was loaded with sweat. She slung it on the floor, and she says, it has been one of those days. Well, now, you got to understand, she wasn't talking to me. But she's talking about my day. Only one I got. And if you don't think every day is important, you just try missing one of them. She's talking here in my city. I've got a reputation at stake. I couldn't let her abuse a day like that. And so I said, yes, it's absolutely magnificent, isn't it? She looked at me with disgust mingled with contempt as she said, you have been out in the sun too long. I said, no, to tell you the truth, I just got back from overseas. I've seen poverty like you cannot possibly imagine. I've seen men and women with nothing to eat and children with no clothes to wear. I've seen sanitation conditions that would absolutely turn your stomach. And I look at you and you're young and you're healthy and you're pretty. And you're working and you live in America. And I know in my own mind, because I've seen so many cases of it happening, you can take this job you've got right here doing exactly what you're doing and doing it to the absolute best of your ability. And they will move you up, because the one controlling factor in the growth of any organization is quality, skilled, gung-ho, motivated people. And I said, you could someday be the manager of this cafeteria. And I said, who knows but what someday some investors might be attracted to your personality and the way you do things. And you might be given an opportunity to become a part owner in a business, because I said, this is America. Now, personally, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, that's, right off the top of my head. I mean, hey, what do you expect? And I knew that she wanted to express her undying gratitude for the fact that I'd so willingly and unselfishly given of my time and my effort to make her lot in life better. So I looked at her and I said, now you feel better, don't you? She said, you are sick. Well, you win some, you lose some, and some are rained out, And so I kind of tucked my tail between my legs, and me and my buddy went on down, and we sat down, and like I say, it was brutally hot. I quickly finished off the glass of tea, and a little lady about 65 or 70 years old. She was one big wrinkle. I've never seen anything quite like it. But I'm also here to tell you I've never seen eyes that were more beautiful and alive and dancing than what I was witnessing with her. She came up to me and she said, could I get you some more tea? I said, you bet. I said, how you doing? She did a little two-step backwards and said, honey, if it is any better, I'd think the deck was stacked. I said, well, why don't you go tell the ladies on the side? And then she expressed a wisdom that really was astonishing. She said, oh, no, pardon mock shock. She said, if I fool around with those girls very long, I might be just like they are. Very true. You see, Solomon said, if you would be wise, you run with the wise. If you want to be a fool, you run with fools. We are affected by the people that we are around. There is no question about that. You want to build that winning attitude? You want to maintain it and keep things going in a positive way? Then we need to understand everybody we deal with is a person. I heard about a fellow that returned a phone call, and the person at the other end picked it up and says 286-7145. And the gentleman said, yes, I'd like to speak with John Anderson. And the person at the other end said, well, who is this? He said, it's 233-9191. Now, let me tell you something that happened to me. People say, Ziglar, where do you get all your stories? Hey, most of them happened to me. About 6 months ago, I was running pretty close to departure time. I checked in at the counter there, and as soon as the person saw my name, got on the little PA system to the people in the plane and said, 3C is here. I was seated in seat 3C. Well, I thought to myself, well, now I really am a number. But I got at least a letter to go along with the number. I'm 3C. Well, I went in and then sat down and got airborne, and they came around to take the orders for the lunch. And he came to me and I said, well, I believe you got a special meal for me. He turned to the other person and said, fat-free is here. So I would... So I'm 3C and fat-free in case anybody, Now, the way you greet people in person is important. The way you greet people on the telephone is extremely important also. I would challenge you, 2 of you, get together, look up 10 numbers of businesses in wherever you live, and swap numbers. Don't put the name of the businesses down. When you dial those 10 numbers, you will be unable to identify more than 3 of them based on the way they answer the telephone. Got another company, and you don't have any more idea than a goat as to what the number is or who the company is. At our company, when the phone rings, our ladies pick it up and with a lot of enthusiasm says, good morning. And then they make a motivational speech, not nearly as long as the ones I make, but they make a motivational speech. It's a great day. People always ask me, is it always a great day? You bet it is. Years ago we decided it's going to be a great day today. And then it's a great day at Zig Ziglar's. This is Barbara or this is Lou. How may I direct your call? Entire length of conversation, 6 seconds. It's astonishing how much time that will save. It is astonishing how much better you get as a response. Because as you know, some people in some parts of the country, they just flat talk funny. And when the first few words on a telephone call are made, most people do not understand the first few words. And got nothing to do with their hard of hearing or not. But when we say good morning, they generally, because that's so familiar, they respond to that. Then when they say it's a great day, now we've got their entire attention. And when we identify the company, then it does make a difference. They do get the word. When I'm at home, and I stress this, when I'm at home, I answer the phone in a different way. I might pick the telephone and answer it singing, oh, it's a beautiful day, or good morning to you. And now you know why I don't make any effort to sing in church. But a lot of times they'll say, well, who is this? And I'll say, whoever you want. Who do you want? My, you sure do feel good today. And I said, yep, like I said earlier, I decided a long time ago I was going to feel good today. Now I might pick it up and say, howdy, howdy, howdy. Now, my favorite way of answering the telephone, good morning, this is Gene Ziglar's happy husband. Now, I do it for 2 reasons. Number 1, it is the truth. And number 2, fellas, you cannot believe how many points I score with that redhead when I answer the telephone that way, okay? And I like to score points with a redhead. Now, when my grandchildren were small, they're, with one exception now, our son and his bride delivered to us last October the 30th, a beautiful new one. But the others, now the other grandchildren are on up, they're too old for this. But when they were little and coming along, or when my children were little, I would use it this way. Now, my first 3 granddaughters were Sunshine. I nicknamed them all. Second one was Keeper. When a fisherman pulls in a good one, he knows he's got a keeper. The third one was Little Lover. And the fourth one is Promise. Now, Keeper is babysitting Promise, so she's a promise keeper. Well, anyhow, and she was the one that pointed that out to me. Well, when one of the grandchildren were around, I'd pick up the telephone, I'd say, good morning, this is Keeper's proud granddaddy. Or good morning, this is Sunshine's proud granddaddy. You ought to see those little eyes just a-dancing there. Oh, it is something. When our son was a youngster, we'd pick up the telephone, and the phone rang one day, and I'd say, good morning, this is Tom Ziglar's proud pop. And a little voice from Sam Wing, who lived down the street, came on. He said, is Tom there? Is Tom there? I said, yeah. And he said, can I speak to him? I said, yeah, Tom. And then Sam turned to his parents, somebody, and said, boy, they've got a weird way of answering the telephone. But I noticed something rather interesting happen, and from then on, every time I pulled my car in the driveway, old Sam would see in it, and 2 seconds later the telephone would ring, I'd answer it that way, and old Sam would say, is Tom there? Is Tom there? He didn't want to talk to Tom. He wanted to hear me answer the telephone. All right. Now, you might say, what's the big deal? Remember we talked about our personal life, our family life, and our business life. Let me tell you what this does to the family. Creates an environment. Creates an environment. See, kids are going to go where they're welcome. They're going to go where there's love. They're going to go where there's excitement. We used to have our den just filled with youngsters from all over. Many of them coming in just to see who this strange couple were, you know. But I'd rather be serving a dozen of the kids Coca-Cola in my den than having somebody else serving my children Coke in their den. See, kids are going to join gangs. The rest of the story with Sam Wing is Sam was overweight, and we became friends. I was doing a lot of jogging. Sam started jogging with me. He lost all of the weight. When he was a junior at Notre Dame University, got one of the most beautiful letters. He said, you know, my family and I have always been close, and his family is loving and close. But he said, I just want you to know that the impact your family, you and your wife had on my life made a substantial difference. We touch and affect people wherever we go in whatever we do. And answering that telephone creates an environment for our children and for our family. It does make a difference. You might say, well, you know, that's kind of out of character for me. Well, let me just simply say, we can make it not out of character for you. When you act a little of that out, the first thing you know, you will be that way. I'm really talking about consideration for others. You know, there's a Afro-American saying that it takes a whole village to raise a child. The Babemba tribe in South Africa has a most unusual custom. When somebody does something of a criminal nature or an antisocial nature, they try that person in front of the entire village. And anybody there, from children on up, who are old enough to voice themselves, will try this individual. And they confront the person who's done the antisocial thing. It might first of all be a little 7-year-old girl. She said, you know, I was really surprised to learn what you had done, because I remember that you're the first one who taught me how to bait a hook. And I remember how I used to sit on your lap around a fire in the evening, and I always felt so good when you were around. Maybe a 10-year-old would come out and said, you're the one who taught me how to read the trails. I couldn't believe you did what you did. The only criticism was none. It was always they pointed out all of the good things that person had done. And it is said that almost never is there a case where the offender ever did anything of an antisocial nature again. Sidney Harris put it this way. Have you ever noticed that when people say, I'm going to tell you something for your own good, they proceed to tell them something bad? Wonder what the impact would be if we kept it good. As I said in an earlier recording, how much better would it be instead of telling a child, you keep that up, one of these days you're going to go to jail, boy. Bill Glass says over 90% of the people incarcerated were repeatedly told by their parents that was what's going to happen. To repeat myself from a previous recording, but I think this is so important. What would happen if we were to say to the child, if you keep studying your lessons like that, one of these days you'll win a scholarship to university. You keep treating people that way, you'll have friends everywhere you go. You keep working like that, and one day you'll be the president of your own company. You see, you put in what you want to get out. You want to maintain that marvelous winning attitude, you need to adopt and have some symbols. Now, they have them on every street corner, it seems, in America. I mentioned earlier, some people call them red lights, some call them stoplights, some people call them traffic lights. You're going to spend 27 hours a year in front of the go lights waiting on the right color to come along. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been sitting there waiting on the right color to come along? You're all excited, you're enthused, you're listening to your Zig Ziglar tapes. I mean, you're motivated. And you're going to spend 27 hours a year there. So what you do, you look out the side of your eye and you see some dude over there and he's waiting on the light to color change too. But he's got a good firm grip on that steering wheel. I mean, he doesn't want it to go anywhere. Fixes his mouth just in case he has to talk to that light. And then you can't believe this, but there's some people who will actually put their foot on the accelerator and race the engine trying to change the color of the light. How many of you have actually ever seen some dodo do something like that? Can I see your... Well, now, I hate to be negative. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to be negative. I'll be like a little boy came home from school one day and said, Dad, I'm afraid I flunked that arithmetic test. His dad said, son, that's negative. Be positive. He said, Dad, I'm positive I flunked that arithmetic test. I'm not going to be negative. I'm going to be positive when I say racing that engine ain't going to change the color of that light, folks. I got a good friend, Bernie Lofchick, and compared to him, I'm one of the negative people of life. Bernie is a positive guy. He's so positive he's never had a cold. On occasion, he's had a warm. He won't even talk about the weekend. He calls it the strong end. And you might say, now come on, Ziglar. Go lights, warm, strong ends. Is all of that necessary? No, you can be mediocre without it. Mediocre? What's old Zig talking about? I'm the president of my own company. Mediocre, I'm worth over $7 million. Mediocre, I got my PhD. Mediocre, I was number one in sales for the last 3 years running. I say, bully for you. But I still say, mediocre, maybe. You see, success is not measured by what you do compared to what somebody else does. You might have 10 times their ability. Success is measured by what you do compared to what you are capable of doing with what God has given you. That's what success really is. Success, I'm not saying you got to be the best in the whole world, but I am saying when you do your best. See, I'm not talking about beating anybody. I'm talking about being number one with the most important person on earth, and that is you. When you can look in that mirror every night and say, boy, today I gave it my best shot. I did my best. You're going to find that that is more than good enough to accomplish some incredible objectives in life. I'm talking about using the ability which you have. What do you do when you encounter difficulty? Well, there are a lot of difficulties. Some of what we call the fender benders of life. Now, what's a fender bender? Well, you know, maybe the electricity did go off as it did in West Texas this afternoon. And incidentally, just as a matter of interest, one young man had interviews. He was heading for the airport. He said the go lights, he didn't call them go lights, but he said the traffic lights were off and it was chaos. You see, when you identify them as go lights, you literally are telling the truth. You know what happens when the lights go off and there's no patrolman there to direct the traffic. So if somebody ever asks you direction, don't tell them to go down to the third stoplight. Tell them to go down to the third go light and make the turn. And you can't say it with a straight face, guarantee it. And the instant you say go light, then your mind is back on this recording and it really will trigger the second thought and the third thought and the fourth thought, because the mind is an associating machine. When you have those little fender benders, my good friend Cleve McClary, who lives over in South Carolina, a genuine American hero, he takes what he calls the FIDO approach, F-I-D-O. If it's just a fender bender in life, you forget it and drive on. There's some things that are not worth making a big deal about. Heard about a fellow that went in a restaurant, ordered some soup. The waiter brought it out, and the guy looked at the waiter and he said, I can't eat this soup. He said, I'll get the manager. The manager came over, and he said to the manager, I can't eat this soup. And the manager said, I'll get the chef. The chef came out, and the guy said, I can't eat this soup. And the chef said, what's the problem? He said, I don't have a spoon. Wasn't a big deal, but until he identified what the problem was, he really couldn't eat that soup, could he? Now, first of all, when you kind of are a little down, maybe you got a case of the blahs. Well, you know, blahs are seldom fatal, but you're just not feeling 187%. So if somebody asks how you doing and you don't really feel like the other and want to get out of that situation, you see, what you do is when they say, how you doing, you can say, well, not real good at the moment, but at 3:30 this afternoon, man, I'm going to be great. And they say, well, what's going to happen at 3:30? Well, I'm going to feel great. Now, wait a minute, let me get this straight. You don't feel good now, but at 3:30 you're going to feel good. Absolutely. What if you're going to feel good at 3:30? Why don't you go ahead and feel good now? Absolutely not. I've worked hard for this misery. Nobody's going to talk me out of it. I'm entitled to it. You might as well forget it. I'm going to feel bad until then I'm going to feel good. That's silly. Why are you going to wait till 3:30? Well, all right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll move it up to 3 o'clock, but not another minute sooner. Now you might say, well, that's silly. Of course it is. And that's why it's funny. I mean, you start laughing, my friends, there go the blahs. That'll get you out of those cases, absolutely guaranteed. Now, the next thing you want to do, you want to look at how you can utilize your time more effectively. Now, we talk a whole lot about that in the goals series in this, and goals are important because it's been rightly said, if you don't plan your future, it's a pretty good indication you're not interested in it. If we just wait for the future to happen to let it unfold, then I'm here to tell you it's not going to unfold in the best possible way. How do you maintain that right attitude? Well, one of the things you do is you take advantage of what I call twofers. Now, what's a twofer? A twofer is getting that college education while you're in automobile university. That's in your car. As you're riding along, and the average American will spend over 10 hours a week in his automobile, you can learn an awful lot of things. In other words, you don't just sit there to get there. On the way, you get a very powerful message. And I will give you a specific example in a few minutes that will make a difference. Listen in your car. You take something to read anytime you go to get in any kind of line. When I head for the airport, I've got a book, a small paperback, or a pamphlet, or something I'm very interested in. In case I have to get in a line, I'm not just going to stand there and stew or sit there and wait. I'm going to be doing something while I'm there. As a matter of fact, when I get on the airplane to go somewhere, I'm a total workaholic. Because when I get home, then I want to have time to do some of the things I enjoy doing. And so I do a lot of twofers. Now, I'm a football fan. Really, I'm a Cowboy fan. I don't know a lot about football. As I said in an earlier recording, the only thing I really know about football is that when the official calls a foul on the Cowboys, he is wrong. Okay. Now, when I am watching the Cowboys, though, I'm always in twofers. I either have my whole family around me and we're having a wonderful time being together, or if I happen to be watching it by myself, the average play in professional football lasts less than 6 seconds. That's right. They have 120 plays in a game. That's between 600 and 700 seconds. That's between 10 and 12 minutes. Now, it takes 3 hours. So during that other 2 hours and 50 minutes, I will average reading well over 100 pages. Or I will put together an outline. And I don't miss any part of the game itself. If I happen to be sitting down when a play starts, I'll catch it on the replay because I guarantee you, if anything happens, you're going to have a replay. That's a twofer that I use. Now, one of the twofers, or one of the things you can do to save a whole lot of time, is promise yourself that you will get rid of your channel changer. 70% of the time we watch television, we have no interest whatever in what we're seeing. And we're channel hopping, and 2 hours later, you can't even remember what you were watching in the first place. Get the TV guide out. You'll be amazed at how much time that'll save you. And make your choices, and then say, I'm going to watch this. Turn into that channel, and you get through watching it, turn it off. Does that require discipline? Yep. You see, it's a choice that we make. And that choice is a very important one. Get rid of the channel changer. What you need to do is you definitely need to know what you're watching and why you're watching it. You need to do a lot of reading. That's one of the things you can do for growing. A lot of people say, well, I do not have a college education. Here's some interesting information. If you're an average reader and you read 30 minutes a day, now that's not all the time in the world. If you read 30 minutes a day, in your lifetime, you will have read, ladies and gentlemen, over 1,000 books. That's the equivalent of going through college 5 times. Now, you won't have the degree, but you'll have the knowledge. One of the things I like to emphasize is what you do off the job determines how far you go on the job. How do you utilize that time otherwise? Now you think about the importance of structuring it, and think about what my daughter was saying when she said she uses the performance planner to keep everything up to date. In 2 areas of your life, your health, now there are 168 hours in a week, your health and earning a living requires roughly 120 of those 168 hours a week. Now there's 7 nights in the week. If you sleep 8 hours, there goes 56 of them. If you eat only 2 hours, there goes another 14 of them. There goes 70 hours right there taking care of your health. If you're doing any exercising at all, add a couple of 3 hours to that. Now, if you work 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, I can guarantee you your preparation and drive time to get there, your de-preparation and all to come back home, the reading and other things you do outside of the job, I'll guarantee you your 40-hour week means at least 50, maybe 60 hours a week. Now you subtract that from the 168, and that says if you're going to have family time, exercise time, recreation time, if you're going to have personal growth time, hey, you got to get that time organized. That's why I keep saying, keep listening, because motivation is the spark that lights the fire of knowledge. It fuels the engine of accomplishment, and it maximizes and maintains momentum. That's what motivation really does. To motivate is to pull out or to draw out. As I said earlier, why did you get so much more done on the day before vacation than you do on a normal day? First of all, you had planned the day. Second, you were excited about doing it. Third, you accepted the responsibility for being there and performing. Fourth, you were disciplined to stay right with the task. Fifth, you decisively moved from one task to another. Bottom line is you got an awful lot more done. You were excited about doing it. But in order to maintain the excitement, psychologist Chad Hillstetter says this: you can't change from a negative mindset to a positive mindset without changing from negative talking to positive talking. To do that, you must change the input from negative to positive. You see, your input does influence your outlook. Your outlook does influence your output. Your output does determine what your future is going to be. Got a letter, 5-page letter from Stephen Payne from Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Finished high school age 23. He enrolled in Automobile University. He now speaks Spanish, French, and Italian fluently. He translates for his company in Spanish and French. He's taken up German and Japanese. He's now also going into Latin, and later he says he's going to learn his own Cherokee language. But let me tell you a bit more about him. He tried to commit suicide. He had a full tank of gas. He lay down outside the car, in the garage, underneath the exhaust pipe, according to what he said. A 17-year-old boy who was a friend of his son couldn't get anybody to come to the door, called his mother. They came to him, and they said he realized when his life was saved that maybe it was for a purpose. Now, what he does is a lot of this positive self-talk. Some of the things he's saying is, I forgive everyone, everything, and especially myself. So I live fully and joyfully in the present moment. Second, he's utilizing Automobile University to the fullest. He listened, and a lot of this got started when he started listening to our series on goals that is part of your series. He said the thing that made the difference, though, was when he watched our video entitled Changing the Picture, and he got a clear idea of what he was going to look like. He set another goal to weigh 155 pounds. And before he ever takes a bite to eat, he always asks himself a question: would a skinny person eat this? And it's amazing what that will do. Now, let me tell you why he tried to commit suicide. He'd lost hope. That's when people want to end it all. There's no hope. Now, when hope was born again with the fact that he was saved, and he said, well, I do have a purpose, then he recognized that he needed to feed that encouragement in there in order to maintain the hope. What does this philosophy really do in life? Got a letter on January 30th, 1995, from a gentleman down in Tampa, Florida. His name is Alan Sowell. It's a lengthy letter, but because it talks about all the things that we believe are important. How can you really be happy, healthy, prosperous, and so forth? Can you really get all the things money, or more of the things money will buy, and all of the things that money won't buy? Forgive me, but as you listen to this tape, you'll know why I've said so many times, listen, listen again and again and again. When you can finish the sentence that I'm starting to say, that means you're now talking to yourself. And the most important conversation you'll ever have is a conversation you will have with yourself. He said, I saw you in Dallas on March 31st, 1994. That was a success seminar. I listened to what you said about the real estate agent, which I mentioned earlier, whose income went up 500%, and who used to be late for everything and hasn't been late since he started using the affirmation card saying, I'm always prompt. Fascinating. I don't know why I listened so intently, because I really didn't have that problem. I began reading the daily affirmation that was in our packet. I read The Power of Positive Thinking. I've since read Over the Top twice, and I'm working on my third time. I've also read 4 other books, and I had not read a single book in the last 2 years. Motivation is what really got him started. In November, I bought your tapes on staying motivated, and have listened to them at least 10 times, and I plan on coming to Born to Win in February. There were some immediate and drastic changes. I began to come home on time. The kids, I have 3, began to run to greet me instead of playing hide and seek and making me find them. My wife has even started to walk out and greet me. The kids asked me to start getting them up so that they could eat breakfast with me before I leave in the mornings. Michelle started getting up earlier, his wife, and started having breakfast with us. These have been the best blessings, and they were unexpected. Michelle's support and encouragement has grown tenfold and is still growing. We set aside a day at the beginning of the year to identify family goals. It's a great meeting. We meet once a week to talk about our weekly goals. He said, my faith has improved dramatically. I weighed 230 pounds when I saw you in Dallas. I now weigh 195. I drank 5 cups of coffee a day. Now I drink a half or none each day. I had 1 or 2 candy bars and Cokes a day. Now I have none. I used to get 2 breakfast sandwiches at McDonald's. Now I have cereal at home. I used to eat lunch out 3 to 5 times a week. Now I take my lunch. As a side note, it's important that you maintain it and don't make the exceptions. I talk about that in another recording. I'd always wanted to be comfortable in speaking to a group. For 4 years, he'd planned to get in Toastmasters. He finally did it when he was motivated to do it. Results have been spectacular. I'd been trying to get in a regular exercise program for 9 years. Before that, I'd run 12 miles a week, but changing jobs, I allowed myself to get out of the habit with the excuse that it was not convenient. In those 9 years, I'd gained 30 pounds and 4 inches on my waist. After hearing you, I started getting up an hour earlier. I tried this at least 25 times in the past, and I always reset my alarm. Now I get up when my opportunity clock goes off. I read Over the Top for 15 minutes, review my goals for 15 minutes, and exercise for 20 minutes. I started off with 5 push-ups and 20 sit-ups and stretches. I'm now up to 3 set-ups of 17 push-ups, 3 sets of 50 sit-ups, and my lower back hasn't felt this good since I was a teenager. I feel better, and everybody tells me I look better. My wife even told me I look sexy, and she had never told me that before. Boy, you can bet that makes me feel good. Now, I read that simply because you've already got the set of tapes, and all I'm saying is use them, use them, use them. You see, when he changed, the wife and kids changed. That's the way you change other people. You change, they change. And if they don't change, you learn to accept and understand them. That's important. Yes, with the motivation, you need instruction also. I was a playground gladiator when I was a youngster. I used to fight everything that moved. I didn't care how big they were, or I'm embarrassed to say how little they were. If I couldn't settle the argument in 10 seconds or left, I'd just bust them one. I mean, that was the way I was. Now, a Mexican boy broke me of that habit. I've never been as glad to see a school teacher in my life. I mean, it took her all day to get there. But in my own defense, I will tell you this, I scared the poor guy half to death. I mean, he thought he'd kill me. He really did. Now, other than that, though, I was very successful on the playground. So at 7th grade, I decided I was going to go out for the boxing team. Weighed every bit of 82.5 pounds. I knew I was going to do good in that boxing ring. Well, they had me sparring with a youngster who was 62.5 pounds. I felt so sorry for him. I knew this is going to be murder. Now, what I didn't realize was he'd been out for the boxing team for the last 2 years. The bell sounded. We started round one. It took him nearly 3.5 seconds before he quickly learned that the shortest distance to the end of my nose was a straight jab with his left. And it took him another 3 seconds before he rediscovered that. I'll tell you, I thought that kid had a bad memory because he kept doing the same thing over and over and over. Well, before that round was over, I'd already decided that I was far too busy to go out for the boxing team. Now, let me emphasize a point. When I stepped in the ring, I was optimistic, I was confident, I was enthusiastic, I was motivated, and I was getting killed. Now, what am I saying? I'm saying that you can be motivated, but if you don't go to your golf pro and learn how to handle the swing, you're still going to have a lousy golf game. I'm here to tell you that that doctor can be excited and enthused and motivated, but unless he goes to medical school, I don't want him working on anything inside of me or outside of me, either one. Now, the coach that day mercifully called an end to the match after one round. And then he started teaching me a little something about defense. By the third day, I was able to keep from getting hit so much. By the end of 2 weeks, I was able to become the hit-or instead of the hit-ee. And I quickly discovered that has a lot of benefits and advantages. And by the end of the season, because of my extra weight, I was able to do better than just good. My point is, yes, motivation is important, but the thing I really want to emphasize is the motivation ought to lead to the education and the training. That's the point I'm making. If you're going to stay motivated, you need to develop a sense of humor. There's a little book called Anguished English. I encourage you to get it. It is the funniest thing I have encountered in, I don't know when. I got 1 and 2 now. Read it. It is absolutely hilarious. Reader's Digest is one of my favorite sources. I love the story of this lady that was in this college town. She called her friend's son. She'd been asked to do that. And she got his voice machine. And the voice machine said, if it's a telephone company calling, the check is in the mail. If it's the Student Loan Association, you should have made the loan bigger. If it's Mom, I am dead broke. Send me some money quick. If it's a girl, don't worry about money. I've got plenty of it. Now, that's Well, why is humor so important? Researchers have found a connection between humor and family strength. Humorous remarks, family jokes, and a playful attitude were characteristics of a strong family and found to be lacking in weaker families. University of Michigan study concluded that people with a good sense of humor tend to be more creative, emotionally stable, realistic, and self-confident. John Maxwell says a person who can laugh at life, laugh at himself, will have less stress in life. If you have a good sense of humor, you'll climb the ladder of success much faster. You build better relationships that help to generate team spirit. I want to emphasize that when you're telling jokes, or if you're listening to jokes, be very careful. No racist jokes. No sexist jokes. Don't tell a joke. Don't start the joke that you cannot finish regardless of who is walking into the room. Filthy, violent language is just simply out of order. Humor, good, clean humor, is really one of the most uplifting things you can find. I love this letter sent out by Dr. Charles Allen under the guise of having had an incident happen, and it was a fundraising letter. And this gentleman had allegedly written him back and said, in reply to your request to send a check, I wish to inform you that the present condition of my bank account makes it almost impossible. My shattered financial condition is due to federal laws, state laws, county laws, corporation laws, in-laws, and outlaws. Through these taxes, I'm compelled to pay a business tax, amusement tax, head tax, school tax, gas tax, light tax, water tax, sale tax, and even my brains are taxed. I'm required to get a business license, dog license, and marriage license while contributing to every organization of society which the genius of man is capable of bringing to light. Comic relief, unemployment relief, every hospital and charitable institution in the city, including the Red Cross, the Black Cross, the Purple Cross, and the Double Cross. For my own safety, I'm required to carry life insurance, property insurance, liability insurance, burglary insurance, accident insurance, business insurance, earthquake insurance, tornado insurance, unemployment insurance, and fire insurance. I'm inspected, expected, suspected, disrespected, rejected, dejected, examined, re-examined, informed, reformed, summoned, fined, commended, compelled, until I provide an inexhaustible supply of money for every known deed, desire, and hope of the human race. And if I refuse to donate something or other, I'm boycotted, talked about, lied about, held up, held down, robbed until I am ruined. I can tell you honestly that until the unexpected happened, I could not enclose this check. The wolf that comes to so many doors nowadays fortunately came to ours and just had pups in the kitchen. I've sold them, and here's the money. A sense of humor helps. I was coming in on a plane once, and more than once, and the flight attendant gets on the intercom and says, "We are now making our final approach." Scared the wits out of me. I told her, I said, "Quick, go tell the captain to make his next to final approach. I've got some things I really want to get done." Want to maintain that upbeat attitude? Take care of your health. Interesting enough, get enough sleep is first on the list. When you burn the candle at both ends, it really inhibits that creativeness in your life. You're more prone to mistakes. You're not producing more. You simply are producing a different quality of work. Now, there's a difference between the workaholic and the peak performer. The workaholic works from fear and or greed. It's easy to invest more hours in a job that you already enjoy and do well than it is to go on home and maybe face a rebellious child that you do not want to deal with. Now, a peak performer works because of the love of what they're doing, and they love to provide for their families. Now, sleep deprivation has caused a lot of mistakes. We now know that the nuclear disaster at 3 Mile Island was at least partially caused by people in important positions not having had enough sleep and make critical mistakes because they did not have that trigger-sharp mind to handle the situation. Chernobyl, beyond any doubt, was largely because of a lack of sleep. The Challenger disaster, it is suspected, was at least partially because key people did not have the sharpness to make that critical split-second decision that could have made a difference. Without enough sleep, your energy level goes down. You're also more likely to become addicted to not only prescription drugs, but the illegal drugs as well. See, the brain produces certain chemicals, and it can only do that during sleep. You don't get enough sleep, it doesn't produce enough of those chemicals. The body demands balance, and that's when it happens. Your energy level goes down. Number 2, eat sensibly and exercise regularly. Believe me, it does not take time. It will generate more time for you. And then you avoid the poisons, mainly tobacco and alcohol. There's been a lot of discussion about the fact that a drink a day will, cut down on your heart attack and so forth, and you'll have less heart trouble. But the reality is that if you take 1 drink a day, chances are so good that you're going to take the second one and then the third one later and then the fourth one. When you factor it all together, those people, if we were to take 100 people that do not drink and say to the 100, start with a drink a day. The other 100, we would say, don't ever take a drink. The 100 who never took a drink would definitely have a longer lifespan. A lot of people say, well, it relaxes me, it sharpens me up. Now, obviously, you don't believe it sharpens you up. If you do believe that, would you insist that your surgeon have a little nip before he opens you up just before major surgery? I don't think so. I've met a lot of people in my lifetime, I really have. Thus far, I have never met a single human being who says, I got to tell you right now, alcohol changed my life for the better. Not even once has that ever happened. I have seen the tragedy that happens when we do drink. And hear this. Many people become alcoholics with the first drink. I've read countless stories of people 55, 60 years old who took the first drink, and that lit the fire, and they immediately started drinking excessive amounts. We can tell you 1 out of 9 to 1 out of 11 who take a social drink will end up with a drinking problem. Now, you've noticed throughout the series, I talk a lot about moral absolutes. A lot of people talk about relative this and relative that. And, there really is no such thing. When you get to absolutes, I believe there are many that are absolute, not relatively. I just got back in from Tampa where I was in a golf tournament over there. When I got home, that red-headed wife of mine didn't ask me if I was relatively faithful to her. As a matter of fact, if I were relatively faithful to her, I'd be in big trouble. It wouldn't be relative trouble. It would be big trouble. There are some absolutes in life. I want you to think with me, all great failures are moral failures. Think about it. What would have been the end result of history without that little character flaw of Richard Nixon, or Spyro Agnew, or Jim Wright, or Bob Packwood, or Mike Espy, or Pete Rose, or Gary Hart, or Jimmy Swaggart, or Jimmy Baker? You see, there are some absolutes. All great failures are character failures. Check the records. As you know, one of the things I'm most grateful for is I have the privilege of serving on the National Board of Advisors for the Boy Scouts of America. The Harris poll was just completed a few months ago. Here's what they found. Kids that served 5 years in the Scouts, 98% of them finished high school. What do they teach in the Scouts? On my honor, I will do my best. 40% of them finish college, as versus 16% of the general population. 33% have incomes of over $50,000 a year versus 17% of the general population. 70% of those kids who stay in scouting 5 years end up in who's who. 72% of the Rhodes Scholars were in Boy Scouts, and 94% of them said as adults that the character development they experienced when they were in the Scouts made a big difference in their character and values in their life. The good guys and the good gals really do win. So where does that bring us today? What are opportunities in America today? Well, the choice is pretty much yours. Opportunity is either now, here, or nowhere. It depends on your attitude. The same amount of letters, but they come out with an entirely different result. Opportunity really is now, here, or it is nowhere. And the choice is up to you. Again and again and again, 80% of all the millionaires in America are first-generation millionaires. Again, immigrants are 4 times as likely to become millionaires in America as are the people who are born here, simply because they come and participate in the great dream. You might say, but Zig, now man, I've worked hard all my life. I've got those qualities. Nothing has happened. Let me tell you a story. Some of you recognize the name Jeff Hostetler. Jeff Hostetler is the starting quarterback for the Oakland Raiders. They're now back in Oakland. But he was the quarterback who, I'm here to tell you, the first 4 years he was in the league, he only had 68 passes that he threw in regular season games. At the end of 7 years, he had thrown under 200 passes. That's not exactly a very busy quarterback, because a quarterback generally throws 30 to 50 passes in one game, and after 7 years, 200 passes. He played for the New York Giants. He was the backup to Phil Simms. As most of us know who are football fans, when the New York Giants won that Super Bowl, that World Championship, along the way, I think it was in about the 11th game, Phil Simms went down. And the coach turned over to Jeff Hostetler and he said, okay, Jeff, it is your turn. Jeff Hostetler picked up his helmet, he ran out on the field, he led the team to victory in that game, led them to the Super Bowl, led them to the World Championship. Now, what would have happened when the coach said, it's your turn, Jeff, had he said, wait a minute, coach, you got to get ready. You see, there are a lot of people, maybe if tomorrow when you show up for work, if you're coming to work to say to you, okay, it is your turn, we are moving you up, would you be able to say, I've worked for this all of my life, I'm ready? Or would you have to say, wait a minute, I got to get ready? What was Jeff Hostetler doing during those 7 years? I can tell you he lifted literally tons and tons of weights. Ran thousands of wind sprints, Jogged hour after hour developing that endurance. He threw thousands of passes through a moving target or at a moving target. He was at every practice session, every training camp. He was a team player, supportive of his team. He was in on all of the offensive and defensive things. He was learning everything he could. And when the coach said, "It's your turn, Jeff," he was ready. That's what I'm really talking about, getting ready. Since 1989, according to the Wall Street Journal, 15 million new businesses have started. Over half of them by women. They had some things in common. One, they had the great financial need. Two, they had virtually no skills. Three, they had no money. Virtually all of them started what we call a trust business, meaning you give me the money, then I'll do the work, or I will deliver the goods. There have been few, if any, prosecutions of these women who did not deliver the goods. They had a great need for money, maybe because of a divorce, the husband walked out on them, maybe because of the downsizing or whatever, but they had a great need, and instead of saying, "Poor little me," they rolled up their sleeves and said, "Hey, here's an opportunity for me to do something I have always wanted me to do." They had gotten ready for it, is what I am talking about. You know, it is said that when Cicero spoke, the crowds would stand and cheer. When Demosthenes would speak, the crowds stood and marched. When the call comes for you to march toward the opportunity, toward getting the things in life that you really want, will you be ready, or will you have to say, "Wait a minute"? In an earlier session, I showed you a little diagram. I put this overhead, which is inside of your set of tapes, showing what allegedly appears to be the 16 squares. Then I pointed out that there were not 16 squares there, but in reality, when you look at all of them, there are 30 squares. But the reality is, when you really look at all of them and look at what you cannot see, there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of squares in it. It's infinity, really. And I think a lot about people. What you see is not necessarily always what is there. Deep down inside, there is that incredible reserve. Motivate us to pull out and draw it. We've been talking about developing the qualities of success. You've already got the seeds. We now need to develop them. I'm going to conclude this tape by simply sharing with you what I shared with you earlier. And that is, I'm going to share with you what the top really is. This time, you probably wonder why I'm repeating it. This time, I'm putting it in the first person present tense. And when I put my name in it, that's where you want to put your name in it. This comes in your set of tapes, so you will have it there and you can do exactly that. I, Zig Ziglar, am at the top because I understand that failure is an event, not a person. That yesterday ended last night, and today is my brand new day. I'm at the top because I've made friends with my past, am focused on the present, and optimistic about my future. I am at the top because I know that success, a win, doesn't make me, and failure, a loss, doesn't break me. I am at the top because I am filled with faith, hope, and love, and live without anger, greed, guilt, envy, or thoughts of revenge. I, Zig Ziglar, am at the top because I am mature enough to delay gratification and shift my focus from my rights to my responsibilities. I am at the top because I know that failure to stand for what is morally right is the prelude to being the victim of what is criminally wrong. I am at the top because I am secure in who I am, so I am at peace with God and in fellowship with man. I am at the top because I have made friends of my adversaries and have gained the love and respect of those who know me best. I, Zig Ziglar, am at the top because I understand that others can give me pleasure, but genuine happiness comes when I do for others. At the top because I am pleasant to the grouch, courteous to the rude, and generous to the needy. I am at the top because I love the unlovable, give hope to the hopeless, friendship to the friendless, and encouragement to the discouraged. I am at the top because I look back in forgiveness, forward in hope, down in compassion, and up with gratitude. I am at the top because I know that he who would be the greatest among you must become the servant of all. I am at the top because I recognize, confess, develop, and use my God-given physical, mental, and spiritual abilities to the glory of God and for the benefit of mankind. I, Zig Ziglar, will be over the top when I stand in front of the Creator of the universe and He says to me, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." I encourage you to take these one at a time. Make it a weekly objective. Read it, memorize it, keep it in front of you, claim it, and you'll be astonished at what will happen to you, your life, your family, your friends, and the people who know you. By the ideas we've talked about. Follow through on these procedures, because if you do, I can close as I always close all my recordings by saying, you do these things and I will see you, and yes, I really do mean you. Not just at the top. Hey, I'm going to see you over the top. Thank you, and God bless you for being here. Thank you.